INTJ, ENTP. Am I speaking gibberish? No. These letters represent personality types or styles that end up being results from the Myers Briggs, also known as the Myers Briggs Type Indicator or MBTI, one of the most popular and widely used personality inventories or quizzes that's still widely used by a lot of workplaces, corporations, leadership courses, self-help courses to help people better understand their personalities and their preferences in how they approach the world, people around them, and problems in front of them. So today, look, we are going to do a general overview of the Myers Briggs to help you better understand how do they even come to the conclusion of these different personality styles, what your results mean and don't mean, and at the end I'll wrap up by sharing my results from the Myers Briggs, and I'll let you know whether I think my results are accurate or full of crap. So hang right in and we're going to dive into the Myers Briggs. So first of all, one of the most popular questions is, how many different personality types or styles are there on the Myers Briggs, and how do they come to those conclusions? Well, there are 16 different possible types or personality styles, and these styles are a result of your answers or responses to a long series of questions that are trying to understand your preferences and tendencies on how you approach the world. These preferences are divided into 4 preference pairs, okay, 4 different preference pairs. And those pairs are extraversion versus introversion, okay, sensing versus intuition, thinking versus feeling, and judging versus perceiving. So let's jump into these different preference pairs to help you understand what I'm talking about. Now, the first preference pair that these questions are trying to get at on the MBTI is trying to determine whether your preference is extraversion versus introversion. Now, to be clear, they're trying to get at where do you direct your energy towards and where do you get your energy from? Okay, where do you get recharged from? So if your preference is extraversion, this means that, look, you get re-energized and recharged by interacting with others, from the stimuli around you, and taking action in the world, all right? If your preference is introversion, you tend to direct your time and energy, and you try to, make sure you get some private time to self-reflect, look internally, all right? And you like that quiet time reflecting on your own internal ideas and self-reflecting as a means to get energized, all right? So you're devoting and you prefer spending that and directing that energy inwards and get recharged by that. Now, to be clear, there's a lot of misconception here. Introversion doesn't mean shy, okay? And extraversion doesn't mean you have the gift of gab and you have to be some kind of social butterfly, all right? You can be a shy extrovert, all right? And you can be an introvert that has the best social skills around. Again, the key words here are energy. What is your preference in terms of where you direct your energy and where you get your energy from? So I hope that clears it up a little bit. The next preference pair is trying to get at what is your preference when it comes to processing information from the world around you. Is your preference sensing versus intuition? Sensing versus intuition. So basically, when you walk into a situation, do you prefer sensing? If your preference is sensing, you literally are relying on your 5 senses to help you gather evidence, all right? What do I see? What am I hearing in this room? And what is it telling me? So you're gathering your information from tangible stimuli, tangible information, things that you can see, hear, smell, etc. If your preference is intuition, it's a little bit more intangible. You walk into a situation, you walk into a room, and your preference or your tendency is, I'm just trying to get a feel for this room. I'm trying to get a feel for the vibe, a feel for the energy. You may not be focused on the tangible and what's coming directly at your senses. You're focused on the bigger picture. You're focused on how are these different things related to each other in the bigger picture. So the way that you take in information is different, and you may have one preference or the other of sensing versus intuition. The next preference pair is trying to get a better understanding of how you make your life decisions. When you're making decisions, is your preference to rely on thinking versus feeling? If your preference is thinking, this means you rely heavily on logic, analyzing the facts, weighing out the pros and cons, and you put a lot of value and weight on accuracy and the objective truth. So one of your primary goals is that you want your decision to be based off accurate and objective truth. Okay? If your preference is feeling, then you're drawing conclusions and making decisions primarily with a little bit more weight on your personal and social values. All right, maybe not hard, cold facts. And one of your primary goals is weighted a little bit more towards understanding and harmony. Understanding and harmony versus kind of objective truth. All right, and that's kind of the difference. How are you making these decisions, and kind of what are you putting more weight on when you're making these decisions? Now, the final preference pair is related towards how you approach the world around you and how you organize yourself. All right, and they break down this preference pair into judging versus perceiving. If you are someone who prefers judging, you tend to like quick, decisive action. All right, you want to just kind of get done with it and move on to the next thing. You tend to be a planner, very highly organized. You don't necessarily like or prefer to deviate from the day's plans. If your preference is perceiving, you're not necessarily in a rush to jump to conclusions or take quick, decisive action. You're okay with the fact of like, I want to take in information, I want to hear a lot of different opinions, I want to soak it all in, kind of weigh everything before I make this decision. And when it comes to kind of your approach to the world and to the day, there tends to be, a preference towards flexibility, spontaneity. You're kind of good with just kind of rolling with it, see what comes of the day, changing plans, great. So that's kind of a very broad description of what this preference is trying to get at, okay? It's judging versus perceiving. So now that we've done an overview of the different preference pairs, basically remember, when you finish taking this assessment and you answer all the questions, at the end, it will give you a result of a 4-letter combination, taking one letter or one side of each preference pair from those 4 different categories, and then you get a 4-letter combination to indicate your unique personality style or your personality type from the Myers Briggs. Okay, now look, you can go onto Google and you can find, different information about what your 4-letter combination means and read these like quirky little paragraphs summarizing, what your results are. They kind of sound like fortune cookies sometimes. But if you can, I think it's actually helpful if you could find an actual kind of, certified MBTI handbook, interpretation book that kind of gives you an explanation and interpretation about your results. And I think it's helpful because, it's a little bit more detailed, kind of breaking down, what your letter combination may mean when it comes to how you are in the workplace, your approach to people, your social life, problem solving. And it's kind of just interesting to read about it more in depth and gives you a chance to reflect on, do I agree with this? Do I not agree with this? Or, maybe I learned something new I didn't realize about myself. So if you can, I think it's worth, trying to take a more in-depth look at your results. If you took the time and energy to sit down and do all these questions, than just kind of reading a snippet from a website, okay? Now, what a lot of these websites don't talk about and, don't really mention are a few of these facts that I want to make sure you take away with you before we jump into my results, okay? First of all, remember, these results are about what your preferences are. All right, this letter combination does not define you, define who you are. It's just simply trying to identify what are your tendencies, what are your preferences. And also, these preferences are not an indication of your skill set or your competency. So it doesn't define what you're good at, what your skills are. It's just what are your natural tendencies and your preferences. That's all. Also realize, even though we went over these pairs and the Myers Briggs is trying to identify which pair do you prefer, remember, these preferences, we use both sides all the time, okay? There are times where, I prefer and lean on introversion versus extraversion, and vice versa. I'm thinking versus I'm going to go with my gut versus I'm going to go with the facts. In most areas of our life, we use a little bit of each, okay? So just remember, these are on a spectrum. It's not black and white. I'm one or the other. I prefer one, I prefer the other. It's on a spectrum, okay? The other thing to remember is, it's interesting, but the same person, if you took the test 10 years ago versus today, you may get different results. And some people say, well, I thought personality was static. Personality doesn't change. Look, tendencies and preferences change. If you are 18 and you take this and you're straight out of high school, all right, versus when you take this in your 40s and you're married and you have kids and you got rent and mortgages and career stuff to worry about, look, your value system, your stressors, your preferences may end up being a little different. So depending on when you take it and what's going on in your life, those things can influence the outcome of your Myers-Briggs results. The final point is, some people almost feel like their results box them in or like limit them, saying, oh, it says like, I'm an introvert, so I guess just that's what I am, and I'm not gonna, try to, expand my horizons or get more comfortable in social situations, etc. Again, that's inaccurate, okay? First of all, introversion is not about being shy. But look, the Myers-Briggs was not meant to be limiting or to box you in. It was actually meant to be the opposite, to promote expansion or growth, okay? It's supposed to help you get a better understanding. And look, you don't have to, if your natural tendency is introversion, doesn't mean you have to work on becoming, to prefer extraversion. That's not what it means. It's okay to know what your comfort zones are, what your tendencies are, but you may find areas where sometimes if you rely too heavily on one preference, maybe it's causing issues in the workplace, at school, in relationships, your personal life, problem solving, and maybe those are areas of growth where maybe you can kind of shift towards that other preference pair, okay, the other side of that, and maybe there are times where you do need to use kind of the other end of the spectrum a little bit more. And that's what I mean. It's not meant to limit you or box you in, but help you think about different areas of your life where maybe there's room for growth, okay? So look, I hope that was a helpful general overview of what the Myers-Briggs is, what the preference pairs are, and what the results do or don't mean. So let's take a look at my results, and I'll let you know my thoughts. So the results from my Myers-Briggs came back as ESFP. ESFP, extraversion, sensing, feeling, and perceiving. So my summary here says ESFPs are friendly, outgoing, fun-loving, and likable individuals who are naturally drawn towards others. They like working in groups with other lively, fast-paced people, and they enjoy offering alternatives based on common sense. Okay, this one was a little bit focused on kind of a workplace vibe because I did this at work a while ago. But let's see. The other interesting thing here, it's hard to see, but they also have a graph to kind of indicate just how kind of clear-cut you were on those preference pairs. It said I was slightly on the extraversion side, slightly on the sensing side, moderately on the feeling side, and moderately to clear-cut on perceiving. So, interesting. So what are my thoughts on this? Well, I won't go over every single letter, but just kind of the ones that pop off the top of my head. Extraversion, I actually disagree a little bit. I think I'm actually slightly, I agree that I'm kind of in the middle, but I think I'm slightly on the introversion side. And I think that because, look, I am a very sociable person. I enjoy conversation, lively conversation of everything from A to Z, from movies to politics to current events, whatever. I could talk forever, basically. My work requires networking events, public speaking. I'm good at those things, all right? I'm good at them. I enjoy social gatherings and get-togethers. But look, Again, extroversion, introversion is about where do you prefer kind of directing your energy, where do you get recharged from? And I'll be honest, I get drained from networking events, from parties, from get-togethers in group settings, okay? Not because I don't like them, like the events or like the people I'm with. No, I have a good time. I'm pretty easygoing. But I get drained, I'm tired, okay? And I'm thinking to myself, when can I get home to just relax, have some quiet time to recharge? And, I think my wife will probably agree with that. I think I'm slightly more on the introversion side in terms of where I draw my energy from and where my preference is. But look, like I said, you don't have to be a shy introvert. At this point in my life, I'm the furthest thing from shy, but I prefer introversion. So that's my thoughts on the E versus I thing. S, yeah, I think that's relatively accurate. When it comes to, let's see, ESFPF, it says I'm more on the feeling side, moderately. That one, I don't know. I think certain respects, yes, other respects, no. I think people who work with me and will probably say that, like, sometimes I'm almost obsessively focused on kind of the accurate, objective truth and making sure that I'm right, factually correct, analyzing the facts, weighing out the pros and cons to make sure that this thing's going to be correct. And so maybe in the workplace, other areas, I could see it a little bit in my personal life, but maybe in a workplace setting, I'm probably more on that thinking end of the spectrum, in my opinion. And then the final one that I'll comment on is the judging versus perceiving. Interestingly, I was kind of further along kind of that moderate to clear cut, kind of scored strongly or highly on perceiving. Yeah, it's interesting because, and this is what I meant earlier by we use both, and we have times where we prefer one versus the other. It's not so black and white or all or nothing. Because look, when it comes to my daily schedule, events in my life, going on vacation in particular, okay, I plan out to make sure the big things are taken care of. Like if we go on vacation, we're going to hit up this place, we're going to eat that place. For the other 90% of the time, I don't know, let's just see, let's look around, let's find stuff to do. If something comes up and it's cool, let's just roll with it. And I'm fine with that. Like that spontaneity, flexibility, like, I think my wife will let you know that in those aspects, I can be pretty easygoing. I don't get worked up or, my feathers don't get ruffled too much if things don't go according to schedule or exactly according to plan. But look, I also have a pretty strong tendency I just want to make a decision sometimes, when it comes to a lot of areas of my life. I want to make a decision, maybe sometimes a little too impulsively, but I'm like, I want to get it done. Let's move on. Why are we talking about this? I don't need to hear everybody's opinion. Let's just do it. We're wasting so much time. Let's make a decision, move on, be done, boom, next. What's next? All right? I don't want to linger, talk about it to death, have a group powwow. Let's just make a decision, move on, let's go. Quick, decisive, probably overly judgmental. So it's interesting because I think there are areas where I'm strongly on the judging, and other areas where, it's, I can see where they're saying I have kind of that moderate to clear-cut perceiving preference. So look, I'll try to find some links out there for some kind of pseudo-quasi Myers Briggs type quizzes if you're not interested in taking one kind of formally. But look, it'll be interesting to see what you do, what your results are. And look, if you know your results or if you take a similar type of quiz and get your results, post them in the comments below and, give me your thoughts on whether you agree with them or you don't agree with them. So this is Dr. Andrew Kim signing off. Look, ESFP, all right? So I hope everyone out there is happy, healthy. Please be safe, everyone. Be well. Until next time, please subscribe.